Welcome back to Studio Fundamentals. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to export audio as MIDI from Suno Studio, and then how to actually use that MIDI in another DAW. So I've started by dragging this track, Ibiza in the Night, onto the timeline, and I'll play it for you here. And then later on, it kind of heats up. So my favorite parts of this track are those chords at the beginning. I think those are sweet. And then the drum groove later on. So I'm going to start by double clicking on the top of this clip header to open up the stems panel. And I've already heard these stems, and I think version 2 sounded better to me. So I'm going to click Insert All, click 4 to close that panel, and Command-Shift-S to preview just the synth. Cool, yeah, so it's a little bit muffled and there's some artifacts in there. So it might be a little tricky to get the MIDI, but let's give it a go. I actually only care about these first 8 bars, so I'm gonna split this here with Command-E, highlight the region that I want to grab the MIDI for, and I'm going to, well, I guess first let's make sure we're in manual BPM mode, tempo locked. I'm going to 2-finger click here, and I'm going to select Download MIDI. And it's gonna take a second, probably in like 10 to 20 seconds, depending on how long the clip is, we should get a download pop up, and it's going to get saved right to my downloads folder. Cool, so that MIDI just went to my downloads, and then I'm also going to grab some of the drum MIDI just so I can show you all how we do that. So I'm going to solo this drum track. Yeah, and this is the groove I'll take right here. So I'll download this one as MIDI as well. You know what? I'm going to grab this bass line as well, because why not? Let's have the bass in there. While we're on the topic of MIDI, it might be useful just to show you how you can export all of the MIDI tracks in bulk right from that stems modal. So if I have my track in my library or workspace, I can click on the 3 dots menu, I can select Get Stems in MIDI, and I can extract my stems, or in this case, I've already extracted them, I can just see them. So we got bass, we got synth. Sorry, watch your headphones. This is synth. And I want to call out that we've added this new export option. So you have your normal MP3 audio, you have wave audio. We now have this wave tempo locked option. So some of you all have noticed that Suno stems tend to drift around in tempo a little bit, which makes them really annoying to import to a DAW. There's a workaround where you pull it into Studio, you fix the tempo, and then you export it from there. But we decided to just bring in a tempo locked option right to this modal. That way you can export studio ready stems in one shot. This is also where you're going to pull all of the MIDI files for each stem if you want to do that in bulk. You can also, for any individual stem, download the audio with this button, or download just the MIDI for this one stem with this little musical note icon button. So now I'm going to pop into another DAW so I can show you what we do with this MIDI. Alrighty, so now I'm going to go ahead and drag that MIDI that we just exported from Suno Studio, and we're going to pull it in right here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this first file in here. Okay, so when you've imported the MIDI, you're going to get probably some sort of pop-up. It'll depend on which DAW you're in, but Ableton is asking me, do I want to import tempo and time signature data into the arrangement? So what this is going to do is it's going to match my DAW project with my Suno Studio tempo information. So in this case, I'm going to choose yes, because I want this to be the exact same as it was in Suno Studio. And I'm going to name this drums, because this is my drum track. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull in that synth track. Cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and say no here. And if I click in to my tempo here, you'll probably see that okay, let's see. Has it been set to the right value? Yep, 123 globally. That is good stuff. And then finally, I'll pull in my bass part. And I'll say no. Okay, so we have bass, we have synth, and we've got drums. So something to note is that the MIDI often involves a little bit of cleanup. This actually seems like it was pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a piano part here, and let's just take a listen. Yeah, so that right there, you know, we gotta hop in and fix little things like this. Cool, and then let's try the bass part as well. So I'll choose just a random bass patch. You know, if you're really digging in for some production, you're probably gonna pick some better patches. All right, so we can hear a few tempo glitches and stuff. This is super common. Like when you're converting audio to MIDI, we're working on making this better, but you're often gonna get these like weird rhythmic moments, a few wrong notes here and there. So I would think of this as like a jumping off point, but it's a good way to just capture those chords. With drums don't really have notes in the conventional sense. What they have is a mapping between MIDI values and drum samples. So if I were to go ahead and just drop one of my Ableton stock drum racks here, let's see, like a 505 kit or something. Probably these samples aren't going to be correct, you know, from the first time that I load them in. Yeah, so that doesn't sound quite right. So let's take a look at this MIDI and see what we can do. Yeah, so to clean this up, I probably want the bass drum hitting on every note. And we've got our, you know, snares up here. I think I want to keep those on a clap. And then this is appropriate. So we've got the hi-hats in the right spot. Yeah, so it doesn't sound pretty, but that's at least a starting point for our groove to get a sense for where some of these drum samples are supposed to go. So the reason behind all of this nudging around is that every sampler instrument and every DAW has its own way of handling this stuff. So MIDI, there is sort of a universal language, but different makers and different drum kit designers will have assigned different samples to different notes. So there will almost always be this process of figuring out which sample the different MIDI values should correspond to. And part of that is just, you know, using your ears and trying to decide, oh yeah, this makes most sense as a kick drum. These are definitely going to be some hi-hats. Up here, I think this is going to be more of like an open hat or something. So I would look for, you know, an open hat sound to assign it to. I'm going to go ahead and just quantize these different values because after all, this is dance music. I'm not going to quantize the hats because I want those to have some swing. But I'm going to quantize this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and quantize our synth. And I'm going to quantize our bass. So now let's go ahead and listen through this like super quickly thrown together, totally unproduced track. Cool. So that's a starting point, right? You can take it from there. You can design some real synth noises. You can start pulling in other audio. You know, maybe you export some audio from Suno Studio, bring that in as well, a little bit more finalized. Hopefully this was helpful just to see like what to expect when you bring MIDI from Suno Studio into another DAW and the kind of things you might have to edit or change in order to start making it useful for you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something here. On our side, we're working pretty hard to make MIDI export much better. But until then, we appreciate your patience with it. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments below. We're always excited to learn about what you guys want in Suno Studio and with the product in general. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.